The Haunting of Ashwick Manor. It was said that Ashwick Manor had a history as black as the night that surrounded it. For nearly 2 centuries, rumors of a demonic presence had lingered like a foul stench, passed from mouth to mouth in hushed tones across the small town of Dunmore. But no one dared venture near the decaying mansion that loomed at the edge of town, hidden behind a veil of fog and gnarled trees that seemed to claw at the sky. The manor had become a thing of legend, a place where nightmares were born, and no one who crossed its threshold returned the same. All of this, of course, was a challenge for someone like Lucy Gray. Lucy had always been fascinated by the paranormal, ever since she was a child. The strange and unexplainable called to her, igniting a flame of curiosity she could never quite extinguish. Now, at 28, she was a freelance investigator, working for small magazines and YouTube channels that specialized in uncovering ghostly encounters and supernatural phenomena. For her, Ashwick Manor wasn't a warning, it was an invitation. "I'm going in tomorrow," Lucy declared to her friend Sam, who was lounging in her small, cluttered living room. He looked up from his phone, eyes widening. "You can't be serious. That place is, people say it's cursed or whatever."
Sam shifted uneasily.
He wasn't a believer in the supernatural, but even he didn't like the idea of Lucy stepping foot inside Ashwick. Too many stories, too many disappearances over the years. There had to be something to it. "That's why I'm going," Lucy said, pulling her backpack onto the couch next to her. It was filled with cameras, digital recorders, and other equipment she planned to use. "If I can get proof of whatever's haunting that place, it'll make my career. Plus, I don't believe in all that curse stuff. Just be careful," Sam muttered. "Call me if you need anything." The next morning, as the first light of dawn barely broke through the heavy clouds, Lucy set off for Ashwick Manor. The mansion was a 2-hour drive from her home, but as the road turned from paved to dirt, the landscape around her began to shift. Thick forests pressed in on both sides of the narrow path, the trees bending toward the car like silent, ancient sentinels. The fog grew thicker the closer she got to the manor, wrapping itself around her like icy fingers. Finally, Ashwick came into view. It was worse than Lucy had imagined. The house stood, crumbling yet defiant, with its gabled roof sagging and windows shattered or boarded up. Vines crept up the sides like a suffocating grip, and the air felt heavy with an unnatural stillness, as if the very land had long ago surrendered to whatever evil lay within. The front gates, rusted and bent, creaked as she pushed them open. Lucy hesitated for only a moment before walking up the weed-choked driveway, her boots crunching against the gravel. She felt a shiver crawl up her spine, but she shook it off, determined to document every moment. She set up her camera at the front door, pressing record. "I'm standing in front of Ashwick Manor, known for its haunted history and strange disappearances," Lucy said to the camera. "Today, I'll be entering the house to investigate the claims of demonic activity. Stay tuned." Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the front door, which groaned in protest as it swung inward. The smell of decay hit her immediately: mold, damp wood, and something metallic. "Blood?" Lucy stepped inside, her flashlight sweeping across the vast entryway. Dust motes hung in the air, disturbed only by her presence. The grand staircase rose before her, its once elegant banister now rotting away. The walls were lined with faded portraits of grim-faced men and women, their eyes seeming to follow her as she moved. She could feel it now, a presence. Something was here with her. The floorboards creaked under her weight as she made her way through the house, documenting every room. The kitchen was a disaster of overturned furniture and broken dishes, as if someone had fled in a panic. The dining room held a massive table, its surface covered in a thick layer of dust. Lucy's hand hovered over the recorder on her belt, debating whether to ask any questions out loud, but she hesitated. The air felt wrong, too heavy. She needed to keep moving. As she ascended the stairs, the oppressive feeling grew worse. Her head began to throb, and a low humming filled her ears, just on the edge of perception. She felt watched, stalked by something unseen. The second floor was in worse condition. Holes in the ceiling revealed rotting beams, and the temperature had dropped significantly. Lucy's breath came in short puffs of mist, and goosebumps prickled her skin despite her jacket. She shined her flashlight down the hallway, revealing several closed doors. "Is anyone here?" she called, her voice wavering slightly. For a moment, there was silence. Then, from behind one of the doors, came a faint sound, a shuffle, like something being dragged. Lucy's heart leaped into her throat. Her hands shook as she slowly approached the door, pushing it open with trembling fingers. The room beyond was a bedroom, long abandoned. The furniture was smashed, the bed sagging, and a mirror in the corner had shattered into 1,000 pieces. But that wasn't what caught her attention. There, in the middle of the floor, was a circle, drawn in what looked like dried blood. The circle was marked with strange symbols. Symbols Lucy didn't recognize but instinctively knew were dangerous. Dark energy radiated from it, pulsing like a heartbeat. Suddenly, the door behind her slammed shut. Lucy whipped around, panic gripping her chest. She rushed to the door, yanking at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Her breath came in shallow gasps as she fumbled for her phone, her fingers slipping against the screen as she tried to call Sam. No signal. The room seemed to close in on her. The walls began to pulse, the symbols on the floor glowing faintly. The air thickened, growing cold enough to burn her lungs with each breath. She felt a presence, something ancient and malevolent. Stirring from the depths of the manor, a deep growl filled the room, vibrating through the floorboards. Lucy backed away from the circle, her legs shaking. The growl grew louder, more insistent, and the shadows in the room seemed to come alive, stretching toward her. A figure began to take shape in the center of the circle, tall, impossibly tall, with burning red eyes and a skeletal frame draped in tattered robes. Its face was nothing but a skull, twisted in an eternal grimace of hunger. "Leave," it hissed, the word echoing in her mind. "This is my domain." Lucy's heart pounded in her chest. She stumbled backward, her mind screaming at her to run. But her body felt frozen, rooted to the spot by an invisible force. The demon, or whatever it was, stepped out of the circle, its form becoming more solid with each step. Its eyes locked onto hers, and a wave of despair washed over her, paralyzing her with fear. Suddenly, a loud crash sounded from outside the room. The door was flung open, and Sam stood in the doorway, breathless and pale. "Lucy, we need to go now," he shouted, rushing to her side. The sudden shock of Sam's presence broke whatever spell had held her in place. Together, they ran down the stairs, the demon's furious howls echoing behind them. The temperature plummeted further as they fled, their breath freezing in the air as they raced through the dark corridors of the manor. The front door was just ahead. Lucy's lungs burned with the effort, and her legs threatened to give out beneath her, but she pushed herself forward, Sam at her side. As they burst through the front door, the cold grip of the house seemed to release them, and they stumbled out into the yard, gasping for breath. Behind them, the manor stood silent once more, its demonic inhabitant retreating into the shadows. They didn't stop running until they reached Lucy's car. She collapsed into the driver's seat, her hands trembling as she fumbled with the keys. Sam was pale, his eyes wide with shock. How did you know I was in there?" Lucy panted, her heart still racing. "I didn't," Sam said, his voice shaking. I had this feeling, this horrible feeling that something was wrong. I couldn't explain it, but I had to come." Lucy glanced back at the manor one last time before speeding down the road, the fog swallowing the house behind them. Ashwick Manor would never let them forget what they had seen, and Lucy knew that whatever lived there would remain, waiting for the next foolhardy soul to cross its cursed threshold.